Okay, today we're diving into a pretty fascinating and honestly, an incredibly efficient way to learn a new language. We're talking about a strategy that can turn one single, short piece of text into an entire comprehensive lesson. Let's see how it's done. So, this is the big question, right? How on earth do you take one simple verse and use it as the seed to learn everything? Vocabulary, grammar, reading, writing, even speaking. I know, it sounds almost impossible, but the way it's structured is just surprisingly elegant. And this is our source material. That's it, a single verse from Matthew 13:23 in French. It basically translates to, "The seeds sown in the good soil are people who hear the message, understand it, and produce a good harvest." Believe it or not, this one sentence is the entire foundation for everything we're about to see. Now, just to be super clear, this isn't a religious lesson, not at all. What we're actually looking at is the teaching method itself. This idea that one rich piece of text can provide all the material you need for a complete lesson. It's really a masterclass in efficiency. So you might be asking, why does this even work? Well, it works because the verse is so thematically dense. It's got a whole metaphor baked right in, a story about growth and understanding and getting results. And that built-in context, well, that's the good soil that helps all these new language concepts really take root. So how do you actually pull the raw materials of language out of this one little sentence? Well, it starts by breaking the verse down into its most basic building blocks. You guessed it, vocabulary and grammar.
First things first, you pull out the key vocabulary. But, and this is the important part, instead of just memorizing a random list of words, every single word is learned inside the context of the story. So for example, the word parable, or parable, is defined right here as a symbolic story used to teach a lesson. See, the meaning is literally baked into how it's being used.
And this just illustrates the point perfectly. You've got words like récolte, which means harvest, or cultiver, to cultivate, and enseignement, which is teaching. These aren't just abstract ideas. No, they are directly tied to the central theme of the parable itself, which makes them so much more memorable and way easier to understand. All right, so once the key words are down, the lesson then shifts over to the underlying structure. And again, this isn't about memorizing a bunch of dry grammar rules. It's more like decoding the logic that gives the text all of its power and meaning. Now, this is where it gets really, really clever. This slide shows how it teaches some pretty complex grammar. So on the left, you've got the subjunctive mood, which is used for necessity, and the example is a sentence about the importance of meditation. And then on the right, there's the conditional, for hypothetical what-if situations, and the sentence is about what would happen if we cultivated patience. The grammar is being taught through the ideas of the parable. It's just brilliant. Okay, so you have the vocabulary, you have the grammar, now the lesson moves into the most critical phase, application. This is where all that theoretical knowledge gets transformed into real, practical, active skills. We're going from theory to practice. The key here is this layered, scaffolded approach. Do you see how it works? It starts with the passive skills, reading and understanding. Then it moves into more active construction with writing and listening. And finally, it all culminates in the most active skill of all, speaking. It's such a logical and powerful way to build skills. And here it is, the end goal. This line comes from the final role-playing exercise, and it shows a learner actually using the language to express a really complex metaphorical thought. I realize that our heart is like soil. Sometimes it's fertile, and other times it's barren. They're not just translating words anymore. They're truly communicating a deep idea, using the very theme they started with. It's amazing. So, let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. Why is this method so darn effective? Well, the big takeaway is all about the power of context. And really, it all comes down to this one powerful number, 4. From that one single verse, the lesson develops all 4 core language skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. That is efficiency at its absolute best. Ultimately, the reason this method works so well is because it's not about rote memorization. It's about engagement. I mean, our brains are literally wired for story. We remember narratives so much better than we remember isolated facts. By anchoring everything to a parable that has a meaningful idea, the information just sticks. It sticks because it actually means something. And that really just leaves us with one final thought, one last question to chew on. What if learning a language isn't really about what you can memorize, but about the stories you can truly understand?